I do not hold numbers in my head. They fall out of my head like you would not believe. Hi, I'm Kayla Amanda. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. I've been doing this for a whole quarter now. Back at the beginning of the year, I didn't really loop you into what my Q1 goals were. I just sort of let you know what the plan for the whole of 2021 was, which means that while I want to do a quarter review, I'm going to have to do some of the work of filling you in on what the actual plan for the first quarter was so that it makes sense when I review it. My Q1 writing goals were just to make headway on both of my projects, Kira and Alex's book and Lee and Hannah's book, by using the 2-day rule, which is just that you don't let yourself break your habit for more than one day at a time. So you're never skipping 2 days in a row, so at the very least, every other day you're writing. So I didn't touch Hannah and Lee's book at all, like not a word of it after I said it was one of my priorities for the year. And honestly, I think that's okay. I'm not going to count it against myself because I wanted to make serious headway on my project, and I think that finishing the first draft of Kira and Alex's book counts as serious headway. Hannah and Lee can just take the back burner. And going into quarter two, I think Hannah and Lee are going to be semi-officially back-burnered because I want to get onto revisions for Kira and Alex, and if I'm feeling motivated that way, I don't want to get in my own way and distract myself with another project. So let's talk success in Q1. For example, did I succeed at using the 2-day rule? Kind of. Of the 19 discrete instances of not writing for at least one day at a time, only 6 of them were more than one day. But a couple of them were quite a bit more than one day, which is not ideal. If I had used the 2-day rule perfectly, I would have written at least 45 days. And I did write 53 days this quarter, so... But I was terribly non-specific about what counted as a writing day. Any amount of writing counted. So here's my problem with the 2-day rule. Right now, the only condition is that I write. And today, I wrote 56 words. Now, you and I both know that that is not gonna get me anywhere. But, but technically, I wrote. So there's a part of my brain that just wants to, that just wants to call it a day and say, I wrote 56 words, that's enough. No, that just wants to say, I wrote 56 words, technically I wrote, it's enough, I'm done. But like we both know that 56 words is not really cutting it. So I think I'll probably have to change the qualification for my 2-day rule. I think I'll probably have to put a word count on it because clearly I'm using it to get out of writing more, which is the exact opposite of what it's supposed to be. The plan going into Q2 was to say that I needed 800 words in a day to count it towards my 2-day rule. That number was picked because even on a slow, bad, unproductive day when I am just not feeling it, if I put a concerted 45 minutes of actual trying in, I can pick out about 800 words. So I figure since I have about 45 minutes a day that I can find to put towards writing, that was going to be my baseline. Going forward, at least 45 minutes of genuinely trying was going to be what I expected from myself. However, now that I've finished Kira and Alex's book, I'm not writing anymore, I'm not drafting, I'm revising, and revising functions really differently. So instead of 800 words, I'm going to say 45 minutes of concentrated effort. So let's look at how my writing days actually broke down because I think it's kind of interesting and it tells me some things going forward into Q2. So for the purposes of this math, we're pretending that March only has 28 days because that's today. And I know that I worked on my revisions today, but I can't guarantee that I'll work on them for the next 3 days. So for a total of 87 days, I wrote on 53 of them, which is 60%. And of that 60% of days that I wrote on, 64 of them were work days. On 51 days when I had my capitalism job, I wrote on 34 of them, which is 66%. Compare that to the 36 non-work days I had, which includes weekends, flex days, stat holidays, vacation time. I only wrote on 19 of them, which is 52%. So for non-work days, I have 3 types. I have weekends, I have stats or vacation days, and then I have an earned day off. So in every 10-day work period, I work a little bit longer on 9 days so that I can take the 10th one off and not sacrifice any pay. On my weekend days, I had 26 and I wrote on only 15 at only 57%. For my stats or vacation days, I had 4 and wrote on only 2, which is not great, but at least it's 50%, which is a hell of a lot better than my earned days off, which I had 6 of and I wrote on only 2. That's 33%, and it's sort of embarrassing. January was my most successful month. I wrote 75% of the days, and of those days, 65% were work days, which is interesting. February came in right in the middle at 57%, but of that 57%, most of them were work days. I only wrote on 5 of 13 non-work days in February, which is 38%, and that's baffling to me. You'd think that on days when I did not also have my capitalism job, I would be more and not less incentivized to write. So March is actually my worst month. I've written on only 50% of the days. There are a couple of ways that I could improve that number for myself. First, I could add back the next 3 days and assume that I write on them. After all, they are weekdays and I am more likely than not to write on them. The other way is that I could write off the almost 2 weeks that I didn't write right after finishing my draft. I could say that it was a celebratory break, or I was giving myself a rest between drafting and revising. It would really improve my numbers, and I don't think anyone would blame me for it. But the problem is that I didn't plan on it. So if I had said I'm gonna take a break, I would write it off. I would just not count them towards my totals. But I didn't do that. I just waited until the end of each night when I hadn't written anything and decided, well, I just finished my manuscript, I can take a break, and wrote it off. If after a couple of days of that I had said, you know what, I clearly am not in a writing mood, I clearly need some space from this, and then decided to take a week off, I would probably not have counted it. But again, I didn't end up making that decision. I just kept not doing what I intended to do and then giving myself an excuse to not do it. So I'm gonna take the L on that one and just accept that I did not write when I intended to for almost 2 weeks. And it's a little bit embarrassing. So what I can take from those numbers is that I need to enshrine in my schedule at least 1 day a week where I have no work and no plans to write. At least 1 day a week where I can just fully turn my brain off and dick around on the internet to my heart's content. Could I have done that with the 2-day rule and just written the next day? Absolutely, I could have. However, I think that by specifically calling it a fuck around day, it'll help me not feel some type of way about it. I don't know about you, but when I have so many other responsibilities and I find myself with a completely wide open day that I then don't write on, it makes me feel like I've wasted the day, like I've wasted this opportunity to get a ton of words down or a ton of work in. And then I start to feel guilty about it, and the more guilty I feel about it, the less inspired I feel, and the more likely I am to sulk my way into another non-writing day. So I think that it's going to be important for me to have those days where I don't feel guilty about turning my brain off, because it's part of the plan. I love a plan. So my only writing goal for Q2 is to get Karen Alex's book ready for revisions. Hannah and Lee are officially a footnote in my life for this quarter. What this means is that I can take all of April to do pre-planning stuff, get my outline in order, do housekeeping, and then in May and June I can do the actual writing so that ideally I can get it out to betas next quarter and get feedback on it from other people who will have to read it and they can tell me that they don't like it. This also gives me a little bit of wiggle room because I'm trying to find a roommate for May and I'm finding that very stressful. I'm also going to use the 2-day rule again with that 45-minute benchmark. In future Kayla, that's 45 minutes of actually working on your books. I'm also going to try to decrease the incidence of more than 1 day without writing in a row. If Q1 had 6, maybe Q2 can have 4. The goal doesn't need to be perfection, just improvement, right? I'm actually pretty proud of myself for what I accomplished in first quarter. I know I had that whole getting vulnerable, standing in my own way, dark night of the soul moment, but we pushed through it, we triumphed over evil, and I finished my manuscript. So going into quarter 2, I'm feeling uplifted and inspired to keep pushing because I'm ending first quarter on that win, which I think will be great to propel me into quarter 2. Hoping that I'm not getting cocky, but that my goals are still reasonable and attainable moving forward. What are your quarter 2 writing goals, or goals in general? Leave them down below. I would love to talk about them. If you have any other questions, comments, concerns, complaints, of course you can also leave that. Like, subscribe, do that good engagement shit, and if you're looking for me anywhere else, I am pretty much everywhere as Kayla Amanda. That is Kaylughmanda, and I'll see you next time.